Why would they give it to that guy? It's politics this, politics that. It was a tie. It was so close that it was anyone's battle. Coach Greg in today's video, scorecard controversy at this year's Mr. Olympia. And so the scorecards reveal that there was actually a tie between Samson Dota and Hadi Chopin for first place in the Open Men's Mr. Olympia. And not only that, Chris Bumstead, he actually won by split decision. That's how close it was. And so I'm going to go over the scorecards, explain to you what happened, and so let's get right into it.
This has really been the speculation all year, is that Chris is going to hang it up and retire after this year's Mr. Olympia, and we got that confirmation today.
And so I don't think it comes as a shock to anyone that Chris Bumstead is retired. People have been speculating all year that he may in fact retire. I was hoping he wasn't. I was hoping he would go for 10. But the shock of him announcing his retirement pales in comparison to the fact that Chris won by split decision and that the man who almost dethroned him was Mike Sommerfeld, who placed 8th at last year's Olympia. But remember, not all judges see it the same way as you do or I do. Everyone has a different opinion. And in classic physique, unlike bodybuilding, it's easy to see how judges are going to prefer different looks over others. And so with Chris Bumstead in comparison to Mike Sommerfeld, they have two completely different looking physiques. Mike Sommerfeld is actually thicker and more of a bodybuilder than Chris Bumstead. And so if they were being judged in a bodybuilding competition, let's say they were both amateurs vying for their IFBB Pro card as perhaps super heavyweight bodybuilders, I do believe that Mike Sommerfeld would have beat Chris Bumstead. But that's for bodybuilding, and bodybuilding has slightly different criteria than that of men's classic physique. And so let's first look at Cbum's physique. Cbum has an extremely tiny waist. He also has very wide shoulders with lats that go on for days. He comes in granite hard, but what you can immediately see is a glaring weakness in the biceps. There's clearly a gap formed, and that's due to muscle insertions between his forearm and his biceps. He doesn't have the aesthetic peaks of a guy like Breon Ainsley, who placed 5th. And if you look at his legs, they're very well developed, but he does have some irregularities. Notice on his right leg, towards the top, there's a protrusion. Now, I don't know if that's an injury or inflammation or swelling, but it's not symmetrical, as in there's asymmetry between his left leg and his right. And so what you're looking for in bodybuilding as well as in classic physique is symmetry. The left looking like the right, and the top matching with the bottom, as well as the front to the back. And that's not the only thing. When you see Chris posing from the back and you notice his hamstrings, there's also some protrusions. But in bodybuilding and classic physique, it's often the person with the fewest weaknesses that ends up coming out on top. But overall, the guy is shredded, probably 4% body fat, wide shoulders, small waist. And so he does represent, in my eyes, the perfect body for classic physique. And looking at the scorecards, Chris won with a score of 6 in comparison to Mike Sommerfeld, who had a score of 9. Remember, a perfect score is 5, and so one of the judges felt that Chris Bumstead deserved the title. And consider this. In men's classic physique, they only judged in the morning. In men's open bodybuilding, they judged in the morning as well as at night, and things can change dramatically. Trust me, wait till I talk about the open. And when I watched the evening routine, it was apparent to me that Mike had made major improvements, in particular, the way he was posing his back. Something about the way he poses back in the morning didn't show quite the detail that he did while posing at night. And so at night, I felt it was far closer. For a second, they had me worried. In particular, when they called them both out on stage alone, I thought, what if this guy beats Chris? It's certainly possible. But no, they weren't even rejudging the weight class. The judging had been done in the morning. But imagine if they had rejudged it at night. We could have witnessed the greatest upset of all time.
I really felt like this was the best ERS that we had ever seen. And no disrespect to Mike Sommerfeld, I really felt like this was between ERS and Cbum.
I beg to differ, but remember, everyone has a different opinion. I respect everyone's opinion on who they think should have won at this year's Olympia. It's apples and oranges. I didn't see it that way. I felt Urs was a clear third place finish, and that is what the judges felt. He finished with a score of 15, and so the judges, they tended to agree with me. And so considering that Mike literally had a first place vote ahead of Chris Bumstead, in my opinion, he clearly did in fact beat Urs Kalisensky. And so here's the thing, Urs was at his all-time best. I'm not sure if he can make any improvements. And same goes for Sommerfeld. I mean, how is he going to improve? They're both at the weight cap and they're both absolutely shredded. And so how could they get any better? They've peaked. They look amazing. Getting bigger wouldn't help. Getting more shredded, I don't think they can do it. And so how can they improve? And so if you look at the scorecards, remember, 5 would be perfect first, 10 would be perfect second, 15, 20, 25, and so on. Ramon Dino, 20. Clearly deserving 4th place. Breon Ansley, 25, also clearly deserving 5th. And so this brings me to next year. Cbum is stepping down, and so there will be a new Mr. Olympia champion next year. And who's going to take it? Well, if Nick Strength and Power were judging, it would perhaps be Urs Kalisensky. Nothing wrong with that. But you have to think that Mike Sommerfeld, who already has one judge, see him as better than Cbum. I have to say that Mike Sommerfeld is the strong favorite to win at next year's Olympia. You're thinking, no, it's Wesley Vissers. He won the Arnold. He placed 7th here. And in my opinion, you're only as good as your last show. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so unless he can put on a ton of muscle in the hamstring, glutes, and so on, and can come in way more shredded, he's not going to leapfrog all of those guys and win at next year's Olympia. But what about Ramon Dino? Well, Ramon Dino, he does have the potential. If he can put on more size while getting more shredded, he potentially could come out as the champ. But the odds are getting lower. In the past, he was finishing in 2nd. He's now relegated himself down to 4th. But who else could surprise everyone? Well, certainly Jose, who's only 22 years of age. He can certainly make those improvements. But I do feel his waist is a little bit too blocky for men's classic physique, and he may, in fact, eventually have to move into open. But there is one man that I'm betting on to shock the world. He placed only 11th at this year's Olympia. But this guy, he heighted in at 6 foot and 1/2 inches tall. He weighed in 9 pounds under the weight limit. And he's only turned pro 2 years ago. If you saw his before and after transformation, you know he has lots of room left in the tank. He has a smaller waist than Cbum and the best genetics in the entire field of men's classic physique. And so look for Niall Darwin to make his move on next year's Mr. Olympia. If he can add on 9 pounds of muscle with the shape that he has right now, he's going to shock the world. And so check out this guy. The quads, the tiniest waist you could ever imagine. The proportions. With 9 pounds more muscle, he is the one to look out for. And so let's get into open. Open class. People were shocked. Derek Lunsford got 3rd. How could he? People thought that he should have been the champion. Samson Dota, how did he place 1st? He didn't deserve it. Should have been Hadi Chopin. Now remember, everyone has their favorites, and everyone is biased to preferring one guy over the other. I went into the show cheering and rooting for Derek Lunsford. But after watching the pre-judging, where did I say he was going to finish? I had him in 3rd, and I was battling it out for 1st place between Samson Dota and Hadi Chopin. I felt it was very close, but in the end, I gave it to Hadi Chopin. I prefer the conditioning. I do, in fact, prefer physiques that are leaner than last time. The guys who get truly shredded, that put in the work. And you're thinking, Coach Greg doesn't know what he's talking about. You thought Hadi was going to win? It was clearly Samson Dota. Look at the score sheets. They literally tied. They both had a score of 8. And so after the morning show, there was no difference. And so if I had been one of the judges, I would have voted for Hadi Chopin. And so therefore, Hadi Chopin would have been ahead of Samson Dota after the pre-judging. And so it was neck and neck, a coin toss, literally a tie. And so I'm looking in the comment sections, people hating on each other. No, what's wrong with you? This guy clearly deserved it. Why would they give it to that guy? It's politics this, politics that. It was a tie. It was so close that it was anyone's battle. Now, in 3rd place, Derek Lunsford had a score of 15. In comparison, Samson and Hadi had scores of 8. And so, at least in the eyes of the judges, it wasn't close for third. Derek was the clear third. Remember, Derek needed to bring up the conditioning of the legs, the chest, and he has to balance out his physique with bigger quads. And because he has the craziest back that you could ever imagine, he needs to bring up the legs. The legs, chest, and so on need to balance with the back. Balance out those body parts with more muscle in the legs, greater conditioning, and he very well could win next year at the Olympia. And what can Hadi do? Hadi got second. Hadi can't do anything. Hadi brought his best package. He was shredded. And in the end, the judges felt he had the second best physique in the entire world. Remember, it was a tie at prejudging, and so it was anyone's game. Now, at the evening finals, the scores went 6 versus 9, and so more judges felt that Samson Dauda had the better physique, and so they gave it to Samson Dauda. And so was it in fact close? Abso-friggin-lutely. But close between Hadi and Samson, not Derek. Remember, Derek is who I was cheering for. But I try to give you an impartial, unbiased view of who I think is going to win the Olympia based on what I see. It doesn't matter who I like, who I want to support, who I'm friends with. I give you my unbiased, unfiltered opinion always. And what about Samson? All this guy needs to do is bring in greater conditioning. My only critique of Samson is he could be a bit leaner. Now remember, the standards for open class bodybuilding, I do believe they've shifted, and the reason for that is because the popularity of men's classic physique. People love the physique of Cbum. And not just Cbum, the other guys as well, Ramon Dino and so on. But that has carried over, and so gone are the days of the bubble guts. People want the aesthetics. And so what are they looking for in open class bodybuilding? They're looking for a guy like classic physique, only 50 pounds bigger. That is Samson Dauda. And so if Samson Dauda can bring in even greater conditioning while keeping all that size, he's going to be unbeatable. Yes, there are guys like Martin gunning for him, but they have to have the aesthetics, the size, and the conditioning. And so a guy like Andrew Jack, that is the type of physique that if he really brings it, he improves on his hamstrings, brings up the legs a little bit, and nails the conditioning, that is a guy that could challenge for the title. And so many people saying, how did Hadi not win it? Clearly, he was leaner. No one's arguing that. Size, shape, and shreds, the 3 S's, he had 2 out of 3. And so did Samson Dauda. Samson had the size and he had the shape, not so much the shreds. And Hadi Chopin, the shape and the size, but not so much the shape. And so based on those standards, that criteria, the judges are thinking, who do I like better? Who represents what I personally want to give that award to? And for me, this year, it would have been Hadi. No disrespect to Samson Dauda at all. He looks amazing, but it was really close. As evidenced by a tie at prejudging, and Samson Dauda edging him out in the finals. And remember, I'm watching this from home on a live stream. I'm not in the judges' seats. They have the best view in the entire world. And so perhaps if I was there in person, I would add a different. Remember, Ian Valère was writing me in private. He was saying, look, I believe that Samson Dauda's got this. And turned out he was correct. And he also stated, you have to be here live to really appreciate these physiques. I've been to these shows live, and he's 100% correct. It's way easier to judge when you're sitting there in the front row than when you're watching at home. And so if you're thinking, I don't see it this way, the judges, they got it wrong. The judges have the best seat in the house, and they are trained to pick the champion. It doesn't mean that their decision is better than yours. It just means that that's what they decided. And that's what's great about bodybuilding. No one has to pick the same winners. And with next year's competition being wide open, a new Olympia champion in classic physique, and with several guys in open vying for first place, the difference could be which of these guys is using GO2 Max and Turk Builder. You need to use Turkesterone, but make sure it's from Uzbekistan. Purchase HCLT supplements as well as GO2 Max. And if you don't believe me, there's a money-back guarantee. We have third-party testing, and so if you use it and you don't like it, you get your money back. Is it complicated? Are you confused? Do you not know what to do? If you don't know what to do, click the link in the description. Can you do that? It's not that complicated. Enter code Greg, it saves you 50%. Who doesn't want a deal? Purchase as many of these as you can afford. Hopefully an entire year's worth. You put it into your cart and it comes to your door and you start making the gains immediately. Is that confusing? Is it rock science? And while you're at it, don't forget the freaking cookbook and the Circle diet book. How to lose weight, keep it off for the rest of your life. Imagine how much easier your diet's gonna be when you got my freaking cookbook. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm, like the video if you in fact liked it, watch one of those 2 bloops, and of course, the books I talked about, coaching plans by me and my team, and if you got no money, get the freaking loan. I'm kidding. Get the free diet and training program. It's 50 pages, well, almost. Get to the website. And until next time, I am out.